Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Hello and welcome to another episode of SoftCover, where I have Mr. Sundeep Misra with me, and we will be discussing this book, which is Fiercely Female, and it's a story of athlete, one of India's premier athletes, Dutee Chand. Just a bit about Mr. Misra. He's a journalist and an author, and he's written a book on Mr. Dhanraj Pillai, who was the former captain of the Indian hockey team, and has also written a book called Mohammed of Banaras and Other Stories, and has also been has written extensively across Indian publications such as Indian Express, India Today, Caravan, Midday. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
My first question, is, you've written a story about another athlete, a sports person. What is it about Dutee Chand's story that compelled you to write this, to write a biography on her?
It's been a while, and there was this, I was following Dutee since I'm from the same state. So, you tend to follow somebody who's coming up through the junior ranks and all of that. But I clearly remember meeting Kartika from Westland, and we were sitting and discussing, stories that are going to happen. And at that point of time, the New York Times had this particular story of her winning the case. The whole gender thing had happened, and it was splashed all over the international newspapers. Even the Indian papers had a lot of stories on that. And suddenly she said that, why not attempt this? And for me, it was just immediately, okay, let's do this. Number one, because you hardly get a chance, an opportunity to do something in track and field. It's not one of those areas where publishers come running to you, okay, let's do something on track and field. It's usually cricket, you would know that. It's usually other sports that are hugely popular. So for me, it was a delight that somebody was already saying yes to track and field, and then Dutee, because I was following her for a while. So it actually came out from that. And then the research work started. It was difficult initially because track and field is not something where stats are available, all over the place. Like cricket, you can go and figure it out. And then finding time for athletes wanting to talk, them being articulate about so many things and not being articulate about a lot of things that they don't want to talk about. So it's actually stemmed from there. That's where the whole story idea came. And I'm glad it's in a book today.
Sure. Before we get more into the book, and it actually focuses a lot, throughout, you talked about stats, you've spoken about her starting as a junior. So I'm sure those stats would have been difficult. But I actually want to talk about the title, which is Fiercely Female, and it connects to so much which has been reported on her own struggles, as well as what you've written in the book. Is this a title which came organically, or is this something which, you were thinking about as you wrote the book?
No, not at all. This is purely from Westland. This is purely from Kartika and the team. I think the moment I saw the title, I said, this is perfect, because this aptly fits the story. This fits the personality of Dutee. This fits her completely in whatever aspect you look at her. You look at her as a person, you look at her as an athlete, you look at her as an icon, you look at her in whatever, whichever thing you want to put her in. And I think Fiercely Female is what she embodies, completely today in Indian athletics. She's blunt, she's open, and she says a lot about things that normally you wouldn't. Especially being a woman in Indian athletics, you would probably think 10 times before saying it. I think it aptly fits it.
Sure. Just to go straight to, I want to just go straight to, let's say, Dutee's, her upbringing and, where her roots are. As you said, you come from the same state. How do you think, how do you think her story and how she brought up shaped her approach to athletics? Whether it was her humble origins or her sister, leading the way into the world of athletics. How did her, let's say, her upbringing and her background shape her outlook towards the sport and then later on competing? Because as the book mentions, that was a later on aspect of it, the Olympics.
I think if, like, I've been to a village quite frequently, because of the book, of course. And if you look at her background, I wouldn't say it's rare. I mean, there are a lot of Indian women athletes who come, maybe if not probably from the place she's coming, but virtually on par, where it's difficult to make ends meet, which is one, difficult to start thinking about being an athlete, which is number two, and difficult to start thinking that, you're going to be reaching a level which is Olympian, which is extremely difficult. Sometimes it's also difficult to dream it. I mean, as journalists, we dream of going to the Olympics, and when we reach there and when we sit down in the stadium and we see all these track and field and the rest of the stuff, we kind of feel blessed, like, oh, I'm watching an Olympic Games, I'm reporting from it. Just imagine a girl from a village where, it's difficult to even locate it on the highway because you got to ask so many people before you reach there. Now, of course, it's different. Now you reach 40 kilometers before her village and you say Dutee and they'll point it to you because that's how the village has become famous with her. But coming back to your question, I think she saw Saraswati, her elder sister, run. She saw that this is the girl who was waking up early 5 o'clock, 5:30, going out to the river bank and, trying to do her training when there was no infrastructure. And from there itself, Saraswati reached a particular level in Indian athletics, which is 400 meters. She went to the National Institute of Sport. She was in the national camp. Of course, she couldn't make it that far. I think that is where everything came together for her. Also, you can't take away Saraswati's, the entire thing of her being the catalyst in Dutee's life that, listen, Dutee, if you have to reach a particular level, and at that time, it was more of, if athletics takes to you a level which is state and national, you get a job. Then the family can also prosper, and probably wherever we are as a family, we can, raise our levels at least. I think that's how it came in. That's how she figured it out, that if I have to reach a particular level in life, I need to be a sports person. And this is the woman, this is my sister, my elder sister, Saraswati, who I have to follow to be there. The other part was Saraswati could never become an Olympian, though she dreamt of it. She was ambitious about it. But things don't come around for everyone. And I think that's what she told Dutee, that, you need to be there where I couldn't. And you ask me, you want this, you want A, B, C, I'm willing to give it to you, but put in all your efforts. If you really look at it in totality, all of this really combined together to propel Dutee to where she is today.
Sure. You mentioned Saraswati, who's a sister who is actually seeing whom compete with Dutee get into the world of athletics. And through the book, we've seen, at times Saraswati is not only an aspirational figure, but she's also in a way another coach, almost a mentor come guardian. We've seen instances when Dutee got angry and she left the sports camp. Saraswati called up and said, how, she got angry. Can you just tell us a bit about, what is the most striking thing about the two sisters and their equation, which you found out while writing this book?
I think if you, all my interactions with both of them, I always found Saraswati to be this protective figure, If by any chance, even if I would have said that, did Dutee have talent at that stage, which was a very normal question. And Saraswati would immediately come on and say that, how can you say that? She was talented right from the day she was born. I mean, she was protective to that stage, to that aspect in Dutee's life. Yes, when you come back, when you point out to the fact about the camps and all of that, there were many times when Dutee ran away. Of course, the running away was not because she didn't want to run or become an athlete or didn't want to be an athlete. It was more of frustration with coaches and camps and all of that. And it was always Saraswati who always drove her back, because she knew exactly that Dutee, if she keeps staying at home, at some point of time, she's going to lose that spark. She's going to lose that ambition that, okay, if I'm at home after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, maybe she will just stop being an athlete. She'll stop running. That is the one thing that Saraswati always feared. Even today, if you speak to Saraswati today, her biggest fear is always that unless she goes and reaches a semi-final of a big competition, she should never give up. It's another matter that maybe, probably with all the news going around both of them and the kind of positioning both have taken against each other in real life, maybe those things affect them personally. But professionally, believe me, even today, Saraswati only wants the good for her. She always says that, if she can just reach the semis of the Olympics, it will be like, a dream come true for me as an elder sister. She's realistic enough to understand that with the timings, a final is out of the question. But sometimes she feels and says that maybe Lord Jagannath will do something and she will reach a semi-final.
Sure, sure. This ties me, talking about Saraswati and her approach to, and we're talking about coaches as well. We throughout the book we saw instances where coaches, Dutee is her favorite is 100 and 200 meter dash, and she says, she can do as many sprints as you tell her to, but she doesn't like endurance running that much. And many coaches actually pushed her to go to do the 400 meter because she would have more of a chance at the Olympics. But her priority, maybe seeing Saraswati, was to get that job for the financial stability. So there are two questions on this. First, that what did you make of the first priority being, let's say, a job to secure my family's future instead of the Olympics, like was a faraway dream that you mentioned earlier? And second was, how did did Dutee take, we see glimpses of it in the books, but maybe for our viewers as well, Dutee take to being told to, let's say, run a greater distance?
I think the first question that you say, or the first aspect of her career as an athlete was very simple. Let me run, let me win state meets, let me at least try and reach the national final or maybe the national championships, which actually guarantees your job in the state of Orissa. That was the first level, which she achieved pretty fast. Suddenly, out of the blue, every coach in Orissa, even Saraswati, suddenly realized that this girl can run fast. Now, the second aspect where a couple of coaches, even Ramesh at times used to point out that, maybe she could have been good at 400, Though when you look at the size, when you look at the height, it's sometimes difficult to understand how. But, a coach always has some form of looking at an athlete that we probably don't. But Dutee was adamant. I still remember her having lunch with her at Dutee Chand's academy, where she was in Hyderabad. And she said in Oriya, I said, why didn't you run the 4,800? I said, maybe something could have happened. And she looked at me like, there was this funny look on her face that, what are you trying to tell me? I am the athlete here. So for me, it was just a question. So for her, it was more, and she replied in Oriya, like, move fast, dodi. In Oriya, it means I just wanted to run fast. There's nothing else that I wanted to do. And this 400, 800 and doing 6 rounds of the field, those things are not for me. And she made that very clear to most of the coaches. She made it clear to Satnam, who was the initial one in Tata. Yeah. Then she made it very clear to Ramesh also that don't ever ask me that I'm going to do 6 rounds or 7 rounds or 8 rounds. I'm going to do the 100, and that is what I'm good at. And that is what I'm going to stick to. So you change your coaching plans according to that. I am not going to change as an athlete. And believe me, this whole thing about her, that this is what I want to do, is probably what's brought her here.
Sure. You mentioned your conversation with her, with Mr. Dutee Chand, and throughout this book, because a lot of it we don't get glimpses of. What were your interactions like? If you could just tell us something, which struck out in terms of your interactions with her father and mother, with Saraswati, with Dutee herself. In terms of like while writing this book, or let's say doing research for it, anything which what is it that struck out for you? Something which we don't get a glimpse of in the book.
We meet so many athletes. I mean, as a journalist, I'm saying, I've met cricketers' parents, I've met football players, hockey players, and the way you asked me, it's so clear in front of me that when I first met her parents, it was more like, you normally see a parent coming and speaking about their own child who's a top class athlete, who's already been to the Olympics and all of that. And they kind of sit with you and they say, this happened, that happened. And, do you remember this? This is what my daughter is all about. This is what she does. So what are you going to write about her? There was not a single question from her parents. So I literally had to make her father sit down, and the mother was cooking. I still remember the mother was cooking in the kitchen outside, which is outside their house. And time and again, I had to tell her, I virtually had to request her, could you come? I need to ask. I have a string of at least, 20, 30 questions, and I really need to go through this. We only have 2-3 days at this moment of time. But it's so difficult for them. It's so difficult for them to talk about their own daughter. Yes, the only area or place where the fathers actually walked away was when the gender thing came up. That what was, that pain you could see on his face. He didn't want to face it anymore. So he said, I'm going outside. I knew exactly why he was going. So I didn't press the issue too much. The mother sat and she spoke. And it's when she spoke, you realize the pain and the suffering that most of us as journalists, we sometimes don't see all that. And I could see it in her eyes. I mean, she did cry. She kind of went silent for 30, 40 seconds, even sometimes for a minute, because she was trying to recollect all of that had happened. And even today, she says that how can you, and she looks at me and says, how can you say that she's a boy? How can you? And on what grounds did you people do that? And this line, on what grounds did you all do that? Why did you make her go through worse? Why did you make me, my family, my husband answer questions in the village, which was so impossible to answer? People who knew her were asking us, how did this happen and when? So, that is where the difference was. They were not willing to talk about her exploits, her medals. But that pain, it remained with them. Even today, I can actually, 3 years back or a couple of years back, I had once gone back and the mother still came and she said, you think those days, you think they'll come back again? So, you actually had to hold her hand and say, don't worry, it's not coming back. It's all fine now. She's going to the Olympics. She's going to get more medals and all of that. And this is just before Jakarta, 2018. And I honestly didn't actually think she's going to get silvers in 100 and 200. I thought she might pip in for third. But that silvers were it was such a delight watching her run in Jakarta, and then to, have the parents on the phone and say, we also never believed it. And we were at the temple praying and all of that, which they do regularly. So, that's how that entire family is. The entire family is around Dutee and wants to understand the pain as well as, talk about the exploits in a way that most parents probably won't.
Sure. This is going to take, this is a large part of the book, and it sheds a lot of light, even the postscript of it, about the entire gender, the gender aspect of it, how she was, because of the high level of testosterone her body produces, she had to go through rigorous tests from the IAAF, she had to go to CAS, which is the Court of Arbitration of Sports, to then challenge that. And how, I wanted to, just the first thing is, when you read about it and, how I think the book speaks, when they asked her to come for tests, they asked her and you said, when the AFI wants something, you just get there. She did not know what was happening, who would challenge it, what was happening at that point. What does that do to an athlete in their psyche, when they're competing, for then this suddenly to be sprung on them? And from whoever you spoke to, whether it was coaches or the people who helped Dutee out, from what you gathered, did that do to her psyche as an athlete? And then later on, obviously, as a female as well, because that's her identity.
Just one word, it completely destroys them / her. It happens to anybody. It could have been Dutee, it could have been anyone, but it completely destroys them. The only thing was, if you suspect anything, you don't let it out in the open. That is the job of the AFI. And they didn't do that properly. They completely destroyed the entire thing by bringing a name out, which basically raises questions which go beyond just technicality. It raises questions which become hugely personal. It could also lead athletes down a road where they feel that they need to take their own lives, because the media scrutiny is one thing. The personal scrutiny that comes from the people who know you, from the very athletes who run with you, they start looking at you. It comes down to a point where an official once told me that, which is the loo that they're going to use? Imagine when that comes into your psyche, what really happens to somebody like that? And when that happened, it destroyed her. I mean, I think in so many ways I have written about that particular evening where she just didn't know what to do. She just didn't know whether this darkness is going to go away or not, in a way that, are they going to, and the only thing, even today, Saraswati says, remembering those days, even the mother says, only thing that was bringing us back into life in a positive manner was very simple. Will you allow her to run? Will you let her back? Because, it's very simple to say, will you allow her to run? But that is the freedom. That is all that she wanted. That is what that woman wanted. She just wanted a track where she could run.
Now, and that was also what gave a better future to the family through both sisters. Yeah.
Exactly. But all of this, when it finished, it gave her the strength that she never had. It made her realize that she can stand up. If she can stand up to the AFI, if she can stand up to World Athletics, if she can go all the way to Switzerland, fight a case without even understanding the legal language, if she can stand there and say that, this is what I am. I was born a woman. I will remain a woman. I'm going to die a woman. That is what gave her strength. And that strength is what you see on track now. That strength is what, when she faces the media, and if somebody asks a very stupid question, she replies back. Earlier, she never used to. So in a way, it destroyed her. But what destroyed her was left behind. What became was the new Dutee Chand.
She rebuilt herself. Yeah.
Yeah, which you now see on track, which is what, if you see YouTube videos of the 100 and the 200 in Jakarta, you will actually realize what I'm saying. That finish symbolizes not only just a 100-meter finish, it symbolizes the coming up or the coming of a woman who's finally found strength in her running to be able to tell the world, this is what I was made for. That is all that, the book symbolizes in so many ways. It's all what Dutee Chand stands for.
Sure. Before we go into what made her, your book actually said, we don't, as journalists, we report on it. But, many instances in your book actually showed the impact it had on Dutee, whether it was staying up till 5 a.m. and not knowing, and then she woke up almost an hour later when all of this broke out. How the newspapers in her hometown were dealing with it. People were coming to the house to just ask these questions. And I think in the beginning you say, the scars this legal battle has left. How important was it for you as an author and also someone who's been a journalist to highlight this and, to show the impact of what it had so that the reader could understand, what a crippling effect this would have had on her?
Extremely difficult in a way, because we had already seen what it had done to Shanti Soundarajan. I had already seen it in a very different manner, what it did to, I'm just forgetting the name, the Asian relay gold medalist in Doha 2006 from Calcutta. There were cases of rape on her. I have seen even sat down and edited pieces on video of her being taken, brutally being assaulted by the police. So all of those things were there in front of me when I was putting all this together. It was something that you really had to tread extremely carefully, because you can easily go into the back end of it and portray it in such a way that, people might feel, oh my God, is this what happened? But do you really want to do that? That is one line probably I took is, let me not make it so brutal that you actually start feeling that, is this what athletics is all about? Is this what they do? So, for a lot of girls out there, for a lot of women out there who want to come into athletics, I'm not saying that this book is going to change anything or whatever. I don't believe in that zone, and I don't buy that at all. But what I'm saying is that whoever reads it, if an athlete goes through it, they should actually get the complete picture of what really happened. Now, whether it was happening to her, whether it was happening to Shanti, and today she's a coach, she's successful. She's thanks to thanks to the Sai who came in and afforded her the coaching and all of that. Also, look what is happening to Castor. They have completely taken her out of the system. Now it's a debate. It's a debate because a couple of people at the top believe that they are there to decide whether I'm a man or a woman.
And now, how?
Yeah. And if you're going to tell me that, okay, this is the scientific evidence, make it 110, not even 100% complete, make it 110% and have a committee of people who agree on every aspect. Even if there's one person who doesn't agree, that policy should not be brought in. It's very simple. And if testosterone and all of these things was so magnified in Dutee's physicality, she should have been Olympic champion. So, of course, the same argument today, they are showing it for Castor. But look at what they did to Dutee, and for her to emerge from all of that, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know how she managed it and how she's reached a stage where she is now standing, virtually at a peak where she can mold her performances and her life together.
Sure. You mentioned Shanti, and because she's a lesser known person in this thing, but the book does speak about her, because Shanti is someone who had to go through what Dutee did, maybe before she did. And there are instances of when she was in front of officials in a most vulnerable state, as a woman, and they were male officials, most vulnerable, where you're physically, emotionally most vulnerable. She said, the book mentioned that she almost stopped traveling by public transport because of the impact that had on her. Now she's a coach. What did you also mean? Was it important to also highlight Shanti's struggles as well in the book while discussing Dutee?
Absolutely. I think it was relevant. It made a lot of sense in trying to portray the stories. And, like the word you used, vulnerable, in Doha, I wasn't reporting from Doha, but I've heard colleagues and everybody talk about it, and I have read instances. And then when I met, and when she told me all of that had happened, and she said it in a matter of fact, it was just like a normal conversation happening over tea in Bhubaneswar and in Delhi also. And she said that, do you know, they just stripped me down and they said, from which angle are you a woman? So, my first thing was, I immediately tried to imagine me being stripped down in front of males, and how would I kind of get used to that fact?
And then the questions also asked to her afterwards. Yeah.
So, and this woman lived with it. And what was the support system back home? Zero. Whether it was the media, whether it was the AFI, whether it was her own state association, nobody came forward. And for a woman who's just won a silver, let's leave the medals out of it.
Yeah.
Those are not important at this point of time. But for a woman to then go start working as a laborer on a brick kiln and all of that, and then to finally come back and find her status back, get her pride, respect, takes years. It's almost, for me, it's impossible to imagine how does one go through it. I mean, somebody abuses us just normally, and it takes us a couple of days to recover from it. Just imagine what Dutee and Shanti and Pinky Pramnik from Calcutta, Hooghly district, what they must have gone through.
Sure. I also want to focus a bit on this aspect where you said that, Dutee, it almost in a way broke her, but that she used that or channeled that, and then you said that run, in Jakarta, which she did. I want to ask you, mentally, obviously, the impact of this, and how is she, in your opinion, seeing her and this thing, how has she emerged from this and uses? Because, not only, vis-a-vis, let's say, competitively, but also then she came out and very openly expressed that, she is someone, who is, she has a same-sex partner, and she's the first athlete to do so. So do you think she got the courage from that battle to then openly declare it? Because, there were just hurdles throughout the way.
I think, she probably realized at some stage that she was alone. Leave the entourage and, the ones who, in my opinion, and it's not in the book, probably not to that level, but the entourage who try and exploit a celebrity. She also goes through that like a lot of other celebs do in different sport. But coming back to what you were saying and asking, yes, she found herself alone, and she kind of started saying that I give a damn. And if this is what I like, and then I'm going to go for it. I don't care what you say about it at all. I don't care what the country says, or I don't care what my family says. And this particular struggle of being gay, I think she was going through it right from the time she was in the academies and the college and everything. There are a lot of instances that as an author, it was difficult for me to write. Let me be very, very honest about it, because there were a couple of people I met who kind of said, it was in college and this and that. But since you're not you don't get that fact correctly, it's wrong to kind of, use all of those instances and stories.
Sure.
So where she came out, and coming back to your question again, this is exactly the strength that she was looking for. And she said, okay, if I'm feeling that way, if this is what my life is, and this is what I like, and if this is the girl or woman, whoever it is I love,
My sexual
then,
orientation, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, this is where I stand, and this is, I mean, you want it, fine. If you don't like it, it's your wish, but this is what I want, and I'll get
Sure.
it. And exactly that is what she's done. I mean, and she's remarkably well.
Sure. Just to focus also now a bit more on Dutee and with the Olympics around the corner. I think the qualifying mark is 11.15 seconds, if I'm not wrong, and the trials to be held in Patiala. What do you think of her prospects going forward? With throughout this battle, I think, like you said, initially Olympics wasn't a dream. It was first financial stability, and then another added battle vis-a-vis, her gender being questioned, and then coming out. She's overcome all of these hurdles, really. What do you think of this final battle, which is actually, once you're a competitive athlete, one of the most important?
I think I'll slip into journalist mode here. 11.15 is a very, very difficult target, and especially when you're running 42, 43 degrees, 44 degrees in Patiala, and I hope it rains in the next couple of weeks or 1 week. At least it cools down for them. It's going to be very difficult to achieve that. But at this point of time, we are looking at 56 runners going to Tokyo. She's at 41 in the 100, and I think the same number, 41, 42, 43 in the 200, which means that if she maintains it, which should not be difficult, honestly, she should be going in the Olympic team for the 100 as well as the 200. But if you ask me, what is she going to do in Tokyo? Again, the answer is very simple and easy. That if she does 11.22, 11.21, maybe she'll cross the first round. Try and also understand that Shelly runs 10.63. So between 10.63 and 11.05, there are probably 24 to 35 runners, And in the Olympics, for some reason or the other, they all come together to have this great timings. So if she manages to raise herself, motivates herself, that at least let me get past the first round, I think anything beyond 11.20, if she does it, it'll be a fantastic timing. I mean, believe me, it'll be like something just top of the world for her. But realistically, I don't see a semi-final. I mean, semi-final would be like a miracle happening out there, honestly.
Sure. This is again to just go back to your book a bit. Do you think she would have had more of a chance if she ran 400?
No, I don't think so. But I'll tell you one thing. I mean, this is something that I've spoken to about Ramesh. I've spoken to him. I've spoken to a lot of Canadian coaches I have met while on my trips there. And all of them have said one thing, that if she had to cross 11.10 or reach 11.10, 11.05, 11.02 even, she has to leave India. I think at this point of time, even though one can say it's slightly late, it's really not too late, because most athletes now, you see, Shelly is running these timings after becoming a mother.
Yeah, and Dutee is 24. Isn't that correct?
24, yeah. So even if she can, but the problem, also probably it's highlighted in the book in a very different manner, that Ramesh also needs to let go. Okay, this is the athlete he's trained. I can always give all the credit to Ramesh, but we always talk about professors at the college, professors at the university level, a different professor at the PhD level. I think in a way coaching is like that. So at some stage, Ramesh also needs to realize that if she probably goes into the US or Canada and stays there and does a couple of years of very intensive training under an academy or a coach, the timings would of course improve. But the bigger problem, it's just not about the timing, it's about competition. You need regular competition to be able to understand what are you doing.
And where you're placed. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And you also need to understand that, okay, this is the other girls or the other women are running faster than me, so how am I going to reach there? Unless you understand all of that and know it. And I think she knows it. But at the same time, it's finances, it's the entourage that always goes with her, trying to tell her, no, India is much better. And anybody who gives her all this right now, in a way, sometimes I think at times she probably doesn't listen too much.
Sure.
So all of these combined probably are stopping her from reaching a level where I do believe that she can run 11:05, 11:10. I completely believe that.
So, I mean, just to wrap up quickly, I just want to ask you, when you said that she should go she should go abroad because it will be better. What do you think? I mean, in terms of definitely in infrastructure, but what is it besides the competition that she will get that she's not getting here, which will then take her to the next level?
Mentorship. I think she needs mentorship. She needs to be with bigger athletes. When I say bigger, I just mean superior timings. Even if the timings are 11:05, 11:02, 11:10, 11:11, all of that, where she knows that I'm going to run tomorrow and these are much ahead of me and I need to reach there. And the other aspect is that at some time you need to get on with coaching to a different level. I'm not at all criticizing the system in India or the coaches, or take away what Ramesh has done for her. Believe me, Ramesh has done a miracle for her wherever.
And he's there throughout. Actually, his presence is there in the book. I mean,
exactly.
Throughout.
Yeah. So now, in a way, like we said, I mean, in the last question, he needs also to let go and say, I think you need to go abroad. I think you need a better mentor, a better coach who has much more bigger facilities and who has more experience of training a 100-meter champion to a continental level where, timings are the essence, not winning gold medals or silver medals at the Asian Games, which he's already done a silver. I really, honestly, believe me, I don't think anything at the Asian level is really going to matter now. What matters is how she's running in Europe, how she's running a world championship, and how she runs the Olympic Games. And yeah, the Diamond League. I mean, that is a big one.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, I mean, just to come back to the book, it's called Fiercely Female. And what do you hope that when, let's say, boys, girls, people who don't identify with any gender, when they read this book, what would you hope, let's say, they get out of it, or something which they take back home with them while reading this book?
For sure.
Sorry, could you repeat that again?
Hope and strength. Exactly what Dutee got from, fighting it out, standing up there and saying that, okay, this is what I am. It's very difficult for me to imagine her in that position. It's easy to hear somebody say and then to write it, because those shoes are different. Those experiences are completely different. What she's gone through, we don't go through, I don't go through. It's very easy for me to comment on it and tell her even that, you've done wonderfully well in your life, and it's great that you have come out in the open, and that you should be the classic example of everything. It's very easy to say all that, but it's so difficult when you actually start thinking for 5 minutes. You sit alone and you start thinking what she went through from childhood up till the time she's here. Do you think I can go through? Can people go through? Then you actually see the reality around her and how she's fighting it on a daily basis. How when she enters a particular meeting or a particular press conference, what people must be thinking, Just imagine her position, and then start putting other people who are not celebs into that position. And I think that's where the book comes in. That's where probably her persona comes in, her personality, that, hey, listen, I'm from this place in Orissa, which you've never heard of, and I don't think you'll ever visit. But I'm standing in your city after coming from there. So if I can stand in your city in front of you and speak so powerfully, so can you.
Okay. That's actually a very nice message to leave everyone with. Thank you so much. And this book is to be released on the 22nd of June. So thank you. And it does leave that message of hope and strength, and also a bit of inspiration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
For chatting us. Thank you.
Thank you so much.